You know, it was a week in Kansas City that saw KCI Airport shut down, most businesses and schools closed as our area was pounded by a major snowstorm. But it was a weather event longtime residents have become accustomed to here in the metro. More shocking this week were events on the Country Club Plaza, which left 1 dead and 16 hurt as a huge natural gas explosion destroys a popular restaurant before the busy evening rush. The injuries and loss of life could have been so much greater, but there are so many lingering questions this week, chief among them, should the plaza have been evacuated before the blast at the JJ's restaurant, when numerous people were reporting strong gas smells that left them feeling sick to the stomach long before the explosion? Kansas City Mayor Sly James hotly deflected those questions this week, saying he refused to play the blame game on that issue and challenged the reporting.
People are reporting a lot of different things, but we have absolutely no phone calls that indicate they reported them to us, the fire department, or the MGE. And if people were reporting smells of gas, it makes sense that they report them to somebody who can do something about it. So one of the things that we've tried to do up to this point is to point out that we're trying to deal in facts, whereas a lot of what's being reported is nothing more than rumor and innuendo. Case in point, the article that was written in the paper that says that the doctor reported to MGE at 1 o'clock that there was gas, when you listen to his statement in the video, he never said that.
Authorities can only respond to what they're told about, says the mayor. The mayor says no one called in a complaint. No one called 911 or the city, Dana Wright.
Everyone is in CYA mode right now. That is what the mayor's comments reflected right there. The fact of the matter is this: people in the know, people who know what to do when the area smells of gas, and I'm talking about the MGE employees, were there at least an hour before JJ's blew to smithereens. Their own website says when you smell gas, evacuate. And multiple witnesses, credible, educated local attorneys, are saying there was no sense of urgency inside that restaurant. They were told, finish your meal, tab out, get out when you can. The wait staff is quoted as saying from hospital beds, there was no sense of urgency here. Someone screwed up, and there is a horrific, really horrific outcome to this mistake. And I know the mayor's saying, let's not blame, it's too early to blame. But someone needs to be blamed because those people should have been evacuated.
You were on the scene a lot this week, Bill Grady, on the plaza, but the mayor is saying it's just one thing for people to complain that they smelled gas, but it's another thing to actually complain to somebody who can actually do something about it. There's been a lot of misreporting here.
Well, I think the jury is still out on it because everyone is covering themselves to some extent. This always happens, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. They're trying to get all the facts assembled. Now, oddly enough, one of the gentlemen that I talked with owns a travel agency right down the street. His windows were blown out. He was in JJ's maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the explosion occurred, smelled gas and called our radio station, as opposed to, now he didn't say specifically he didn't call first responders, but that seems to be the general theme. Mr. Hack, who is a COO of MGE, says that the gas was at safe levels and that it takes a while for it to migrate into a building before you can determine that it is dangerous. So that's the company's take on it, but this is far, far from over.
Dave Halley.
Well, I think there has been some criticism of the mayor's tone at his news conference, suggesting that somehow reporters were trying to blame people, when I think the journalistic endeavor is to try and find who's responsible, Nick, so that if it happens again tomorrow, we know who is responsible for making this call. Now, it is very clear, I'm working on this story today actually, the city has an evacuation plan, a published evacuation plan that lays out different scenarios, and it's very clear from looking at that document that the call to evacuate an area lies with what's called the incident commander, typically either a fire department person or a police officer. He or she makes the call at the scene of an incident, and then that evacuation follows. What the fire department is telling me today is they don't consider this explosion an incident until the actual explosion takes place. Well, that is a gaping hole in your evacuation plan. If you don't have some chain of authority from the time the first call comes in until the explosion, something needs to be fixed, and I think that's what's going to be examined.
In the press conference, though, the mayor said that they deferred to the experts on the field, which were the Missouri Gas Energy
and they may well have done that, Nick, but the plan does not anticipate that at all. It says simply the fire department or the police department makes that call. If that's wrong, it needs to be changed.
Let's hear from Sam and Dana.
Generally speaking, at a gas leak, it is the local utility that commands the scene. Now, I think Dave is right that there seems to be some disparity in that, but almost everywhere you go, when there's a gas leak, they defer to the utility because they know where the shutoff valves are, they have the equipment to test the gas. And the question that I had in turning off the gas is, I don't know how old those gas lines are, but there are probably gas lines down there that are 80, 90 years old, and having a map to know where the valve is and how to turn it off may eventually turn out to be a problem.
But you don't think MGE didn't have that? And I'm just going to say this, according to the Kansas City Star, and I thought you guys did a great job the next day. They have a national gas expert quoted in that article as saying it would have taken 3 minutes to shut the gas off a little bit further down the street. Why not err on the side of caution, go a block down and shut it off? And those are the questions, not blame, that need to be answered. Why not shut it off? It's too late now. A woman's dead.
Well, I mean, my argument is I think that the city will undertake some endeavor to understand what the chain of command is when in an incident like this, because someone needs to take charge. Clearly that didn't happen in this case, at least until the explosion. Let me also add one other thing, Nick. We have to pay attention to what happened after the explosion as well. People were evacuated. Who made that call? Who went door to door? Who has the authority to tell someone in a nearby apartment it's time to leave? I talked to people down there who said no police officer came by, no firefighter. How were they told that they needed to leave, and what was the perimeter? Those things, you know, you learn lessons from incidents like this, and I think the city of Kansas City definitely
But reading the letter section of your very own newspaper, many people have been very impressed by how the mayor handled this. Regular press briefings with the head of Missouri Gas Energy, with the fire chief, being very solid, very definitive, coming out, again, with regular briefings. There was no vacuum of information. He came out very strong and has been there throughout the whole deal. Doesn't he deserve credit here?
I think he put a pretty good face on what was really a tragic situation, but as Davis said, there are so many things here that are yet to be determined. Heartland Midwest, a subcontractor, actually made the initial call of the gas smell. Now, what I did find interesting is that as soon as I got to the scene, which was just a few minutes after the explosion, there were still people walking around with sniffers above, north of where the explosion occurred to determine if there were other gas leaks. And so I think the question becomes, where were they prior to the incident?
I also want to say really quick, Nick, I think this is a fascinating case study about groupthink, and I think people didn't go with their gut, and we saw this, and I'm not comparing this to 9/11, but we saw this on 9/11, where people are kind of standing around and not doing anything, and people in the restaurant said, you know, we kind of thought if this was a dangerous situation, they'd be telling us to leave, and he wasn't leaving, and she wasn't leaving, so I didn't leave. And I think there is an important lesson to be learned here, that if you smell gas or you really feel like something's not right, you are in charge of your personal safety, and no one is going to take care of you better than you.
I don't disagree with that. And, you know, obviously going forward, I think all of Kansas City will feel that way. But you have plans in place for a reason, and you have lines of authority for a reason. Nick, it is mandatory evacuations are not permitted under Kansas City law. You can't force someone to leave. Maybe we need to take a look at that. There's no law that allows the fire department or police to make you leave your home. So what I'm suggesting is when the mayor is concerned about what reporters are asking, it's easy in the days after an event to sort of say, oh, you're trying to blame somebody. What all of Kansas City wants is some understanding of how to address this problem, so if it happens again, we don't get the tragic outcome that we did.
But it's going back to Dana's point from the very beginning, going back to what it says on the Missouri Gas Energy website. If you smell natural gas, evacuate the premises or area immediately.
It's on their own website.
That should be all of our advice after this story.